Hi, I'm Becky Kraai, and I am half of the team today. Derek will be speaking the message, and I will be doing the intros and the in-betweens. So first is welcome to lots of familiar faces and maybe some new ones. If you are new, want to tell us who you are, we'd love to hear that, and we can even give you this microphone.
Hi, I'm Darla, and I live in Tryon, and I'm really happy to be here. I've only been here one other time, and I told others I'm wearing my signs from yesterday when I did the protest, but I think I've decided I'm just going to wear them all the time because I'm really obviously upset about how people are being treated, especially immigrants, but a lot of people in the United States right now. Whether you're on Medicare or Medicaid, you're a mature adult who's retired, I feel that a lot of people are, especially people with disabilities, are being treated very poorly. And so every week it's kind of getting hard to stomach it. And I really don't know what else to do, so I've decided that I'm probably going to have a sign on my chest every week. And make a lot of people out there uncomfortable. When I go to Ingalls, you might see me there. Or if I go to Food Lion, you're going, oh, there's crazy Darla, she's wearing a sign this week. And I feel like that's, something that I'm going to do for quite some time until I think things are going to change for people. So I'm the crazy lady in the back with the signs on, and it's probably going to be like that for a while. Thank you.
You're the wise lady in the back.
I don't recognize you, but do you want to say anything? Lady in red.
Well, my hair's up today.
That's the difference, okay.
Did you want to say anything?
Well, I'm Donna Christopher, and I do attend irregularly with my friend Judy, and I do look a little different today, I have to admit.
Okay. Thanks. Today is the day after Flag Day, birthday, protest day, and it's also Father's Day. So anybody who has a father or is a father, enjoy your day especially. Yeah, think about how important they are to you and how they mean all of us. Now we'd like to hear from Annie for Prelude. Thank you. So announcements is the next thing, and you probably have something.
This has been in Don's communication, but I want to remind everyone, our 5th Sunday service for June, which will be June the 29th, will be our annual meeting. That's going to be at the Depot in Tryon, regular time, 10:30. And then following the service, Ernie will be doing a brief message. We'll have the annual meeting, and then following that, we're going to have a celebration of our 35th anniversary. So, we had said earlier that the fellowship would provide entrees and everybody needed to fill in with a covered dish. However, the board has decided that we're going to cater the whole thing. So we will have a meat entree, a vegetarian entree, and then several sides, and we'll have a special cake to celebrate our 35th anniversary. So if you want to bring something, if you think, oh, I can't not make my famous baked beans or whatever, feel free to fill in, but you don't have to. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody, and even if you're not a member, if you're visiting, Darla, we'd still love to have you come. Okay?
Thank you.
Where is it going to be located?
The Depot and Tryon.
And where is that?
I don't know, so stop asking me that question. I don't know the street address,
Or-
Ellen.
It's if you go up the steps from downtown, that's where it is. It's the yellow building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
You don't have to go to steps.
yeah, it's where we had the Mark Twain presentation. So if you went to that same building, I just don't know the street address right off the top of my head.
Pacolet Street.
Pacolet
It goes up to
Street.
the post
Okay.
office from Mars.
Okay, so Don, before you send out the next reminder, we'll make sure we get the exact street address to put it in.
Okay, but
info.
it's easy to understand, it's on the railroad tracks, it is the depot.
Well, that's good. You gotta have trades.
Just turn left at the horse.
Yeah. Or right.
Turn left at the horse if you're going towards Columbus.
Or right.
Yes, okay.
Anybody else?
Any other announcements?
Yeah, and then make an immediate right turn after you turn up that hill, yeah.
One other thing, this may be, I should probably say this under Joy's, but I'll say it now while I have the mic. Yesterday at the protest in Columbus, I counted 8 people from our fellowship there, and 9 counting Darla. So, with our official membership is 32. Now we know we have other people who join us as friends, but that means that 25% of our fellowship membership was at the protest. I think that's a really good turnout. Tracy?
Question, so there was a protest in Columbus?
Yes, there was.
Please make sure I'm on y'all's list because I didn't know where to go and I knew Spartanburg was not going to be a good thing with my walking and stuff.
Yeah, well, you know what, I found out word of mouth, and I think that's how the Columbus one was managed, was word of mouth. I don't think they did a lot of formal announcements.
It was the Democrats who put it together.
Yes, Polk County Democrats.
Just count me in on
Okay.
all of that here. We can do another one for practice.
Yeah, but I thought there was an excellent turnout in Columbus, and most of the cars driving by were very supportive, blowing horns, waving, doing peace signs. I think there was only 1, maybe 2 that drove by and did a thumbs down. So,
Okay. Ellen, you want the mic?
No, I can talk loud.
Okay.
I went and took pictures of the Columbus one, and then I drove up to Hendersonville. And I don't know if any of you were there. It was you were there, yeah, okay, and it was amazing. It was huge.
It was huge.
There's a couple thousand people.
Wow.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Ellen, if you were in Columbus, that means 10. So now we're up to 30%.
By the way, the Hendersonville crowd was very creative with their signs.
Yeah.
My favorite sign was a picture of Trump, and it said, "Does this ass make my sign look big?"
Yeah, I'm going to be putting the pictures up probably as a video, actually, just so you can see one after another. I'll let you know.
Speaking of signs, there was one little lady who, it really tickled me, but she had a taco. It was in reference to taco, and she had a taco shell with a little orange head stuck in it. I thought that was absolutely great.
Okay. I have brief opening words that fit a little bit into the message by Mary Oliver. It's about half her little poem. Why do people keep asking to see God's identity papers? When the darkness opening into morning is more than enough. Certainly, any God might turn away in disgust. Ties in with immigration too. Okay, chalice lighting. Who's got the quote?
Good morning and welcome. With deference to our pluralistic diversity of those in this room, I'm not going to attempt to read any quotes that define God. Instead, I'm going to give you some thoughts on spiritual curiosity. Being curious allows us to be more objective in viewing our responses in our thinking, doing, and feeling. Being curious shines the light on patterns and gives a name to what we experience. Being curious gives us the space to step back, to study, learn, and ask questions. Being curious reveals options to our behavior and thoughts we never realized before. Being curious gives us hope. Being curious invites us to open our hearts to see our true self through love. Being curious works not only in our spiritual inner work, but at all intersections. And a quote from Albert Einstein, and I'm changing he to she and he. One cannot help but be in awe when he or she contemplates the mysteries of eternity, of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery every day.
You might recognize the theme of this song. The song is probably, what, 50 years old?
Oh, more than that.
More than that. What do you got for you?
What do you got for song? It's called Deportee. You know the song, Deportee? It's kind of relevant to the deportations that are going on right now. And if you reverse the words in here, they kind of resonate with what's going on. Woody Guthrie was moved to write this song because a bunch of migrant workers were being deported to Mexico. Guess what? And the plane crashed. And that moved him to write the song. This is, again, probably 80 years ago now. And what upset him was that the radio announcer who mentioned the plane crash said, oh, well, they were just deportees. That's the song we're going to sing for you. Join us if you can.
Sorry. You got what you need?
Just about.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Crops are all in and the peaches are rotting. The oranges piled up in their creosote dumps. They're flying back to the Mexico border. Pay all their money to way back again. Goodbye, my one, goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportee. My father's own father, he waded that river. They took all the money he made in his life. My brothers and sisters are working for fruit trees. They rode the truck till they took down and died. Some of us are illegal and some of us not wanted. Our work contract's out and we have to move on. 600 miles to the Mexico border. They chase us like outlaws, like rustlers, like thieves. Goodbye, my one, goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mis amigos, Jesus y Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the big airplane. All they will call you will be deportees. This is the best way we can grow our orchards. Is this the best way we can grow our good fruit? To fall like dry leaves around my topsoil, and be called by no name except deportee. Goodbye, my one, goodbye, Rosalita. Adios, mi amigo, Jesus Maria. You won't have a name when you ride the airplane. All they will call you will be deportee. Some things don't change.
No.
And in thanks for your gifts, we say, to the work
Of this
of this fellowship, which is leading an attitude of love and action we call unity, we dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings. And now Derek will take over.
I want to begin by thanking Ernie for allowing me to talk yet again to you. He's taking a chance every time he does this, but and I want to say too that Ernie's talks have been so not just powerful, but that's a good way of talking. You know, he's emotional, he's right on, he's giving us advice, and by comparison, talking about God is going to be more philosophical this morning. It's not going to be emotional, and it's not going to be advisatory. But I do want to talk about God because I think it's a topic that is on people's minds ever from birth, almost birth until death. We do think about God. We don't talk much about God. And I want to begin by saying, I saw eternity the other night, like a great ring of pure and endless light. Now, if you hear what I just said, that means I died last night. I saw eternity. You don't see eternity, or that is to say God, unless you get there and you know how. Well, I didn't die, obviously, so relax. Those are two lines of a poem that I happen to be fond of by a guy named Herbert, and a British poet of several centuries ago. And what he's describing there is what I want to begin with. Mysticism. Mysticism, he's got it right on, by the way. Mysticism is in the first two lines. He talks about eternity, and he says a ring. We always describe eternity as a ring or a circle because that has no beginning and no end. And he mentions light, a ring of eternal light, something along those lines. He's expressing to us a mystical vision, if he wants to express it in his poem. Mystics are very much a part of the study of God, and that's why I'm beginning with mysticism. Mysticism is defined as a direct, unmediated contact with God. Have you ever had one of those? No, you probably have not. We all in some ways experience God, especially through prayer and other ways, which we'll get to a bit later. But most people are not, in fact, mystics. If you want to be one, well, get busy. First of all, join a monastery, where it's nice and quiet and you're away from the world. Second, stop eating. You need to divorce yourself from the things of this world in any way you can. You obviously eat something because you want to stay alive. Thirdly, you might do some meditating, maybe some chanting, that sort of thing. These things are all designed to bring about maybe a mystical experience. The last thing is, some people have used drugs to bring about a mystical experience, and that's not just now. Peyote is a very old drug, which you all know was used to change our perceptions of reality, and that might have been in the interest of bringing about some kind of connection to God. I want to say, again, unmediated. If you're a mystic, you're seeing God directly. Whatever that may mean. I'm not one. I'm not likely to have a mystical experience. Maybe you are. Good luck if you are, but if you are and you come to me to talk about it, I won't listen to you. Why? Because you can't talk about a mystical experience. Anybody who says they can didn't have one. They are, as we say, ineffable. You just can't talk about them. And that's my thinking about God as well. I'll get to that in a moment. First of all, though, I want to say that in thinking about God in this context of speaking to you as Unitarian, I went back to our Unitarian handbook here. It's about 100 pages long. And I was looking, I read the whole thing. It's really very good, I must say. It's got some really touching stories in here. And I recommend it to you anytime you get a chance to read it. But what I was looking for was how many times Unitarians mentioned the word God in a 100-page tract. It's about 10 times. That's all. And that interested me. And I'm not saying that, by the way, in an accusatory way or to point the fingers at Unitarians. There's a reason why I think they don't mention God very much at all. And I'll get to that. It's a funny word, G-O-D. It's easy to pick up, by the way. When I said I went through here, I just looked for the small word, here and there, and I found it about 9 times. It's such a tricky concept, this concept of God, that I rarely even use the word myself. Well, when I hit my thumb with a hammer, I might use it then, and then be followed by a few other words that I won't use in front of you this morning. But kidding aside, how often do we talk about God? We really don't, and that's probably a good thing, because we can't, I'm going to make the case this morning, we really can't talk about God. That's one of my first points, that think about, for a moment, think about infinity. That's where God has to be. He used the word eternity, I believe, in the poem that I was reading to you, that sang to you there. But think about infinity. It means no time and no space. Can you think about that? No, you can't. We live in an infinite space-time framework. We always know what time it is roughly. We know we're in a building right now, or we're in our home, or we're outside. We know the space we're in, and we know the time we're in, because we live in a finite world. God, by definition, lives in an infinite world. And I say by definition on purpose, because if you define God, whatever you would choose to, you have to include the notion of infinity for God. Why? Well, because things that are infinite don't die. There's no time. It's hard. It's really very hard to think of infinity, but I can say this much about it. It means no time and no space. It means no ending and no beginning. That has to be God. God can't be otherwise. God can't have a beginning, and God can't have an ending, or else you're not talking about God. And by the way, even an atheist would agree with what I just said. They may deny God's existence, but you can't deny something unless you can at least roughly define it. And the rough definition of God would be some kind of infinite presence. We use words like supreme being, or give me some help here, creator of the universe. We have all kinds of ways to describe God with a name. Most of us do, but just try to picture God for a moment. In language, if you study semantics, which is the study of words, you quickly learn that every word has to have what we call a referent. It has to refer to something. So when I say I bought a book, I mean one of these things. And if you speak English, you know what I just said. The referent for B-O-O-K is this. The referent for watch is this. And so we do that all the time. We don't use words without anything to which they refer. But that's the problem with God. One of several problems with God. There isn't any referent. I can't just say book like this. What's your referent for God? Well, there's all kinds of them, actually. But we never can get our intellectual or emotional hands on God. We talk about religion a lot. We're in a religious context right now. we can talk about religion. We know there's about 5,000 of them in the world. We know that there's the big ones and the little ones, and we know that they come and go. We can always talk about religion, and in fact quarrel about it. In fact, even sometimes kill each other over it. But we just really have trouble talking about God. I'm trying right now to give you some thoughts about God, and that maybe will help us get a little clarity. But I'll say it again, we really can't talk about God. What we do instead of that is we invent religions. And they, in some way, make God concrete for us. They include buildings, synagogues, and churches, and temples, and so on. They include books, Bibles, and Korans, and Upanishads, and all the great books of the Eastern religions. So we have books, and we have buildings, and we have people coming together, as we're doing in the name of God, but we really can't otherwise, I keep saying it, get our hands on God. I'm just going to go through over here. In place of trying to know God, as I say, we invent religions, but there are two kinds, and I want to just spend a few moments on those two kinds. The two kinds are geographically knowable. There's Western religions and there's Eastern religions. The Eastern ones are interesting when it comes to God, to what they try to tell us about God, because they're not at all like the Western ones that we're used to. This one, for example. You have Hinduism, which is probably the major Eastern religion, the biggest one, that is. How many people? I don't know, a lot are Hindus. You have Buddhism, you have Taoism, you have, what am I forgetting? Well, come back to it.
Shinto?
Yeah, Shinto, yes, thank you. You have the big ones, and they have some kind of God or another, but a great deal of diversity there. Hinduism has a whole bunch of gods. I'm not sure they even know how many gods they have in Hinduism. There's a couple, little more for the other ones, but there must be hundreds of them. There's probably God of a wristwatch for all I know in Hinduism, and I'm not being silly now, I'm just saying that's what we call polytheism. And then you have Taoism, which Ernie spoke to us about some time back, which is really kind of a paradoxical. How to describe Taoism? I don't have time to describe Taoism, but all I know is that one of the keys to Taoism is the line that says, if you can name it, you don't know it. So the Tao is unnameable. The Tao is the word, the only word we have to describe what Lao Tzu, the author of Taoism, is trying to get across to. But it's pretty vague stuff. So you have all those polytheistic gods of Hinduism, you have that vague mystical god of Taoism, and then you have the god of Buddhism, which is no god at all. Buddhism has no god. They have the Buddha. I'm still skipping one other one. Buddhism, Taoism.
There it is.
Well, in any case, Eastern religions are kind of, that happens every so often in Ernie too. Eastern religions, like ours here in the West, are kind of all over the place, but they're not putting forward a God the kind that we have come to become accustomed to here in the West, where we have what? Christianity, Judaism and Christianity somewhat together. We have Islam, we have, those are the two big ones. That's why I get Christianity and Islam are the two biggest of the Western religions. I don't know if I didn't write them down. There's a couple other big ones. What I want to get at is not just which ones they are, but what's unique about Western religions. I say unique exactly, but what differs them from, in their view of God, now that's what I'm talking about in case you forget. In their view of God, they do have some things in common. They have, first of all, the notion of generally one God, not polytheistic. Yeah, I know Native Americans have polytheistic, but that's not a major religion. They have normally one God. That God is named. It's Yahweh, in Hebrew, it's God the Father. I guess in Christianity, it's Allah in Islam. And
Baha'i?
Baha'is, yeah, I think they're probably a little small. I'm not sure what they call their God. But the thing is, we do name God in our Western religions. We also personify God. You can't very well personify 500 different gods in Hinduism. We personify God. We give God personal qualities. God the Father and God the Son, this sort of thing. The formal word for that is we anthropomorphize God. Anthropo means man or person in Greek. And so to anthropomorphize is to give God some kind of human form, which I think is a great mistake. First of all, it's a mistake with respect to pronouns, because pronouns are he, she, and it. So what's it going to be for God? We have the feminist movement, which I certainly support, saying God's a she. Others say, no, God's always been a he. Well, frankly, I'm tired of that discussion. I think it goes nowhere. God does not have gender. I used to say God does not have sex. I thought, no, that's that's better to say God does not have gender. God doesn't have anything that we can get our hands on. I keep saying that. But we do anthropomorphize God. We also, in Western religions, tend to talk in dualisms. We have good and evil. We have heaven and hell. We have, I wrote some down here where they go, whatever. Normally, Eastern ones are what are called monistic. They have either the Buddha or whatever it might be, but they don't work in dualism the way we do in the Western religions. I'm just giving you a really quick survey of the ways in which we've tried to conceptualize God as pathetic little human beings down here on earth, trying to get our intellectual grip on God, and we simply can't. We can begin erect religions with all that comes with religions, and that can be both good and bad, because religions have done a great deal of harm in the world and a great deal of good in the world. I'm not going to go there right now. That's our best attempt. Well, that was all really well until, I'd say, the Enlightenment time, the 17th century or so, when we began to do serious science. Newton would be the first name to come to mind. Science was almost immediately perceived as a challenge to traditional notions of God. I think that was a mistake, but that's the way it was. It was for a long time, but then when along came Charles Darwin, of all things, with his notions of evolution, that really upset Western, especially Christian religions. We always talk about coming from apes and so on. To me, that's pretty irrelevant, but nonetheless, science in people like Newton and in the 19th century Darwin and all the great scientists seem to have moved the discussion away from God into science. We've been there for quite a long time, I think. But what I'm going to suggest to you with this much background is that it seems to me that we are, in fact, evolving a somewhat different notion of God. Not that linear notion of God up in heaven up there and us down here, or Allah, or Muhammad, all the different things that we come up with in the Western world. No, something different from that. Not that we're abandoning traditional notion of God, Eastern or Western, but it seems to me that we're beginning to discover, here's where I'm going to get a little vague now, but we're beginning to discover that we don't have to be stuck with this linear, as I call this linear God, in a line to us up there, with this linear God, or with the polytheistic gods, all the different things we've done for tens of thousands of years. There may be something else coming in our understandings of God. And maybe coming not in opposition to science, but in fact, because of science. One of our greatest scientists is, of course, Albert Einstein. He didn't like being called an atheist, because he wasn't one. But he certainly wasn't talking about God in any of these traditional ways that I've been talking about to you this morning. Here's where it's going to get a little A little different. Einstein and some of our great mathematicians, like Heisenberg and those people, whom I barely know, and I didn't even do very well in math myself, so I'm not going to pretend that I did, but our great mathematicians are sometimes saying, including Einstein, that God may be mathematics. The only reason for that comes to mind right away. Mathematics is the only study we do. It's kind of a science and kind of not a science. The only study we do which uses, as you know, numbers. And numbers, unlike words, are eternal, just as God is. You see where they're going with this. The number 2, for example, isn't going to become 2.3 this afternoon. It's going to be 2. And when you add 2 to it, you get 4. You don't get 5.1. So there's something about numbers that is more, what can I say, more certain than about language. And that's why a lot of mathematicians have begun to say, not, I don't want the words in their mouth now, but roughly begun to say God may be some great big formula. Does that sound weird? Yeah, it does sound weird. I'm stretching things a bit now. But the second part of that is, and this I believe you will understand better, mathematics, thanks to Pythagoras, going back to the 5th century, has always been linked to, guess what? To music. To music. And music has as its fundamental feature harmony. We love harmony. We always respond to harmony. Little children can respond to harmony. Old folks, Becky and I play in some retirement homes. Old folks can sing those songs even though they're well into various stages of Alzheimer's. They're not responding to the words of the song, they're responding to the harmony. There is something about harmony, and I don't even know what it is, but it is tied to math, just because math is also harmonious. That 2 plus 2, again, is not going to become 5. It's going to become 4, and all the rest of the great equations that go on beyond that are in fact harmonious. When you picture the equation, what do you always have in the middle of it? An equal sign. This harmonizes however many numbers it may have, how many lots of crazy stuff that mathematicians do. With that, that's what the equal sign is all about. Math is harmonious in the same way that music is harmonious. And that's why I think, again, if we're ever going to get to God outside of our religions or outside of our mystical attempts, we probably are going to get there through music. We all love music. We all love different kinds of music, and some is not very godlike to me, but we do respond to music every time. And so I'm trying to say this morning that God may be something like math and maybe something like music because of the same thing with their harmony. And I don't know what happens to us when we die, but I'm going to just venture that we go to the great harmony in the sky. Whatever that may mean, it doesn't mean a thing, I just said it. There is something harmonious about God that we just can't grasp. We're living in a world that's not very harmonious, especially right now. We're being almost drawn away from the harmonies that are God. But that's what our scientists are saying. Science is not some enemy of God, as they thought when Darwin came along with evolution. No. Science may be giving us a closer approximation to God. As we get more to know how the world works, this world works, we may get to know something more about the person that we think somehow is behind this world. One more thing. If you think that was bad, linking God to mathematics, I'm going to go a step further. There are those of us who might be inclined to argue that God doesn't necessarily have to be a being. A being. And you say, what could that mean? How can God not be a being? Everything is a being. This thing has wristwatch, being. I have human being, just as you do. So we do think in terms of being. Metaphysics, by the way, is a study of being, and it's a branch of philosophy that can get pretty wild. But we'll keep it simple. My question I asked a moment ago was, does God have to be a being? Just because everything else is a being in our, here we go again, in our finite world. But God, again, is not finite. So there's no necessary reason, can you follow this so far? I think you can. No necessary reason that God has to be a being. Well, you're sitting there thinking, if God's not a being, what's the alternative? Well, clearly non-being is the alternative to being. That's not where I'm going. I'm not going to play games here. No, the alternative to being, and you kind of already know this, if you think about it, is becoming. Becoming. Could it be that God is not a being, but rather is a becoming? What does that mean? Well, that brings us to Teilhard de Chardin, the name I have up there on the board behind me. De Chardin was a, how are we doing on time here?
Good, 8 minutes.
How much?
5 minutes.
Time, okay. De Chardin was a scientist, a paleontologist. He died in 1955, so he's not too far out of our time. He was a French paleontologist. He was also a Jesuit priest. A man, that is a man of God. Deeply committed to God. He wasn't drifting away from God through his science. He was getting closer to God through his science. He won awards, and he served in World War I as an ambulance instructor carrier and a chaplain to the troops in the front in World War I. So he had a good long religious life and a good long scientific life. It led him to some interesting thoughts about God. I'm not going to say conclusions about God, but in this business of becoming that I'm talking about right now. De Chardin, if you read his stuff, and I have tried to, it's pretty hard going. De Chardin seems to be saying, by the way, he's an evolutionist, as any scientist would be these days. He believed in evolution, all of every scientist. He seems to be saying that our consciousness, that is our mind, not our bodies, but our mind, is in fact evolving. Just like our bodies evolve, we got rid of the appendix or our or whatever, what's that, we got rid of something, bodies evolve, we know that about bodies, they get bigger, whatever. So bodies being material can evolve materially. He's not talking about that, he's talking about the evolution of mind. And he's saying that, in his view, as a scientist now, as a paleontologist, you love rocks, I always look at rocks. As a paleontologist, it could be that God is not this unknown that we keep coming back to with our religious practices and the things I've said to you this morning. God may be more material than we think. As a scientist, he was saying that. And he seems to be saying, I can't say, he seems to be saying that as we grow in our consciousness, we may become, there's that word, we may be becoming more godlike. Are we going to be God someday? No, he wouldn't go that far. As a Christian, as a man of God, he wasn't going to say, we'll be God someday. He kind of got a little close to that sometimes. That's why it's no surprise that his works were banned. That his written works were not printed, except people passed around anyway. Who's going to stop that? And he's banned from teaching. Couldn't say the things I'm saying to you now. So, what am I saying here? That it just may be that I'm trying to get him through to you now, as we improve our consciousness, that we may become more godlike. We have improved our consciousness. A caveman could not understand what I've said to you this morning, I don't think anyway. We're a lot better than that, but that's our brain. He's talking about our consciousness of the world in which we live. And he says that we are in fact we are cohering, we're coming more and more together. Yes, he speaks about this arc of, this gets pretty vague now, I don't want to take any more time with it, this arc of consciousness that will someday encircle the world just like a biosphere or a stratosphere. And again, he doesn't quite, he said we will be getting more together, we will be getting more conscious, that is our souls will be, and we will be getting more godlike through a process, again, of not being, but becoming. Well, did that lose you? I'm sure it did. Okay, thank you. It's just interesting to, all I'm saying, to start to conclude now, all I'm saying is that there's lots of ways to think about God and talk about God, not just the Western linear God up there, we're down here stuff, and not just the polytheisms of Eastern religions or whatever else they offer to us. There's lots of ways to try to envision God. And Desjardins is in the quiet circles of theology and philosophy, one of those people who's really, I don't want to say gone off the deep end, but he's really gone away from these traditional notions of God. I don't even recommend you try to read Desjardins. You're plenty bright, I don't mean to imply that, but it just, even some of the great scientists who have read it and who approve of him say, what's he saying? He may not himself know what he's saying, but he's onto something there, and it's at least worth a few minutes of our time. That's why I've given you that this time this morning. Please get his name in front of you. He says, for example, we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a temporary physical experience. The finite world that I spoke of earlier, in which we presently are. He says those kinds of things. He says, the true progress never makes itself felt, never realized in any of the material creations we try to substitute for ourselves in the hopes they will survive our life on earth. It is in souls, that is consciousness, it is in souls that the advance is made, the real sparks in which the inner fires of the world are concentrated and embodied. And he says, the last one I put up there for the most telling, the profound way of describing the evolution of the universe would be to trace the evolution of love. That's pretty nice for a scientist, you know. I'm trying to show you here at the end that scientists are capable, not just going into laboratories and pouring things into tubes. They're capable of trying to come up with a vision of God that will, I'm going to suggest, will gradually replace the visions of God that we've had for the past, whatever, tens of thousands of years. Having said all that, I want to get back to Unitarian and this little book. I said it doesn't mention God very often. You know what it mentions a lot? Compassion, justice, equity, and the others too. Search for truth, acceptance, community. Those are just reading from the principles here. Could it be that the Unitarians are onto something? Dump the God stuff. That's why I only found the word 9 times in the book there. Dump the God stuff that are made to be heretical. I don't want to get struck by lightning now. Dump that and think about acceptance of each other. Think about community. Think about the very things that we do think about in these comings together as Unitarians. And maybe they're onto something that they're out ahead of even the scientists by saying we don't need to worry about God, finding words for God, the things I've talked about this morning. Maybe God is a process of becoming better human beings and raising our consciousness of each other. The last thing I want to read to you is just a couple words, consistent with what I've been saying, I hope, this morning. And consistent with the fact that I've been saying, for example, it's very hard to name God and very hard to talk about God. And that's, I hope, gotten through to you. And we do have alternative versions of God, as in Desjardins. I want to say to you the last line of a famous book by a modern philosopher named Wittgenstein. And I think it's consistent with Unitarian understandings of God and consistent with what I was saying this morning. And that is his famous last line to a book called the Tractatus Wittgenstein says, whereof we cannot speak, thereof we need to remain silent.
So, give Derek a thought or a question. Final thoughts?
Oh, do I?
Just wondering, we're opening it up to people to
Right, yes.
have anything to
Yeah.
ask or say.
Do you know God better now? No.
One thing that I've been thinking for a long time is that we're all cells on the body of God.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I didn't-
We're all cells on the body of God.
Yes. But
And
still-
some of the cells are not healthy.
Yeah. But that's what you just did. We always go back to our finite world language. Words, we use the words like body. I'm not criticizing what you just said. I'm just saying we don't have the language for God. And if we ever do, then we would be much more like God. That's the best I can do to respond to that. Richard?
The terror of the quantifier.
Yeah, the terror. Who said that?
I
You did. Ooh, it's getting heavy in here.
Ah.
The terror of the quantifier.
like the important verse in the Bible, I am, then I am.
I am that I am. And Einstein referred to, guess what? A mathematical God. I think I said that
I
already.
like to think with the other, Einstein has a hold of the tail. He says,
Yeah.
You tell the story.
No, go ahead. I'm
Einstein says I have a hold of the
You need to have the microphone.
Right close to your
He
mouth.
talks a lot, so relax.
Einstein says I have a hold of the tail. I've examined the tail. I know a lot about the tail. I know the tail is attached to something much bigger and greater, but my feeble mind has no concept whatsoever what is attached.
Thank you.
Something like
Somebody else. Yes,
Rob?
Barbara.
I've often thought that God was a function of language. Without language, you could not say anything about God.
Yes, right,
There would be no concept.
yes. Keep in mind that mathematics is also a language. That's why I kept talking about mathematics.
The Tao that you speak of is not the Tao.
Yeah, that's right, the Tao that you speak of is not the Tao.
There's over 89 sections to talk about it.
Anybody else? Yes.
I'll just say one thing, that the quote about we are not, forget now exactly what it was. Oh, we are not humans having a spiritual experience, but we are spirits having a human experience.
Yes, yes.
It is often a quote that we have used in hospice care, because I worked with hospice for several years, and I think that helped ease people into becoming.
Into becoming, thank you, yes. See, I happen to believe, I like that quote too, I happen to believe that we have come from somewhere else and we're going back to somewhere else. I have no idea what that means, but all I know is we're finitely here, birth to death, however many years that might be for each of us. But it's not, doesn't make any sense to argue that we have an immortal soul that goes on after death, on and on. No, if you're immortal, you have to start, you have to be here before we're here now. It's the only way you can have it. You can't have it both ways. You can't say the soul starts at some point. You can't start. It's fine. It's infinite. Just like God. You can't. Infinite things don't start. And they don't end either. Well, let's not drag this out. People want coffee. Me too. Thanks for listening, and we'll thank you, Becky, for leading us through all the things.